Hello one and all, and welcome back to the Endercraft SMP. I've heard that the first 30 seconds are the most important for viewer retention, so I'm going to immediately dangle a carrot in front of your face and get right into telling you all the crazy stuff which you'll be seeing in this episode. Today's episode will feature an Ender Dragon fight which sees me hunting down the entire rest of the server, a harrowing and high-stakes journey through the end dimension which had me contemplating suicide multiple times, and finally, the newest addition to the boardwalk build, which uses the craziest palette I've ever built with. Get ready, because this will be a fun one. The first thing I wanted to do after getting the first building of my base set up at the end of the last episode was to start getting better gear and equipment. And of course, the quickest and most efficient way of doing this was villagers. So, I knew kidnapping some farmers would need to be my top priority. Luckily, I found a village in decently close proximity to my base, and all the way to voluntary workers across the ocean. I promise they came of their own volition and that there are no terrible historical equivalents to what I was doing. Next, I began building a pit for them to live in, just big enough to house them and their small farm, and with the only beds tantalizingly out of sight, they would live under artificial light for the rest of their days, and breed more voluntary workers for my workforce, who would then be trapped in a second, more watery pit, until I had a use for their talents. But I wanted to put my new laborers to work as soon as possible. So, I built a third pit, equally dark, into which I could transfer the villagers that were born in the first pit and had fallen into the second. Along the walls of this final pit, I carved holes from which they could offer services, and started selecting good trades. I set myself up with Unbreaking 3, Silk Touch, Mending, and Fortune 3. Then I added a Fletcher, and eventually a Toolsmith and Armorer. I now had my basic setup that I needed. There was only one problem. Their trades were far too expensive. Of course, the only solution to solve this problem would be to forcibly kill them and then revive them, in the process asserting myself as their savior. In this way alone, I could sway the masses. However, I didn't have the materials to brew the weakness potions, and I didn't feel like going into the nether for more blaze powder. But I had a solution for this too. Allow me to introduce you to Elicited Flame. This man had set up his main base near spawn, and we had already gone on many adventures together. He and I braved the nether fortress and the stronghold long ago already. And, most importantly, during these adventures, he had told me his plans for the server. Plans which were now very relevant to me. You see, Elicited's base was less of a base and more of a shop. A tavern, actually, called the Copper Dagger. And in this tavern, Elicited sold potion bundles on request. So all I would need to do would be to put in an order for some weakness potions and wait a bit until it was fulfilled by him. Now, the Copper Dagger can consider this segment of my video to be my review for their services, and as it currently stands, they get 1 star out of 5, for it has been over a week since I put in the order at the time of writing this, and I still do not possess any weakness potions. Ah well, some plans were not meant to succeed. But while I was still waiting for the shipment of potions which I now knew was not going to come within a reasonable time frame, I decided to start planning my next build. And after messing around in a creative testing world for a bit, I settled on probably the craziest palette of blocks I've ever used, which truthfully doesn't say much since you know I'm not much of a builder. Some notable examples of interesting blocks used in this build are red nether bricks, netherrack, melons, mud blocks, light gray glazed terracotta, and clay, among others. But the large diversity of blocks meant I had a lot to gather, so I got to work on that. The first thing I would need would be calcite. Luckily, I knew of a location with an amethyst geode from my previous caving adventures, so I was able to quickly gather what I needed. The next items were also straightforward. I already had mud, copper, diorite, and netherrack. I made a quick trip to a nearby mesa for some terracotta, some of which I dyed cyan, and some of which I dyed light gray before glazing. I mined some clay near my house, chopped down my bamboo, and grew some moss for the rest of the easy blocks. The rest would be a bit harder. I started an extremely inefficient nether wart farm for red nether brick, which took forever to produce any useful amount. I also started growing melons in my garden. I then grew some mangrove trees to chop down, which truthfully is one of the least fun processes in the game. And last but not least, I made a trip to the nearby basalt delta to gather some basalt before smelting it into smooth basalt. Before too long, I had everything I needed, and it was all arranged beautifully in my chest. I was almost ready to build. But then, right as I was finishing my collection, a message rang out across the server. It was finally time for the Ender Dragon fight. I had waited a long time for this moment. for the opening of the outer aisles and access to elytras and shulkers. And truthfully, I didn't even care about the dragon fight itself. But, as all of the server members grouped up and gathered in the stronghold basement, the server owner ZK told us something interesting. This was not going to be a standard dragon fight. No. First of all of our gear, the gear I had been grinding towards in the first place, was not allowed. Instead, we would be given a special kit of basic iron armor and tools. And now for the second twist. It would be a manhunt. One randomly chosen member of the server would be selected as the hunter, attempting to kill the others, while the others were trying to kill the dragon. And, like elementary school infection tag, whomever the hunter managed to kill would join the hunting team. The method for selection was simple. Our heads were placed in a dropper and a button would be pressed. Whoever's head was dispensed would be the hunter. And as I stared at the dropper, full to the brim with our skulls, I had a gut feeling that I would be selected. But it was just random chance after all, right? Surely my gut feeling meant nothing. Surely it was superstition. Surely it would...
Bruh.
That was Fractal.
Bruh. Okay, you know what? Sure.
This was awful news for me at first. I didn't want to kill all the people I was trying to form friendships with. But I'm sure you noticed my immediate tone change. And the reason for this was simple. I realized that friendships meant nothing in the face of content, and that I'm a content creator above all else. This occurrence would allow me to produce better content for you all. So, not so begrudgingly, I geared up in the shiny diamond armor of the hunter, and waited for the others to slip through the portal. With the final pearl in their hands, ready to embark on their quest, silence fell. I waited and watched, carefully observing the people I would be cutting down, slaughtering in the end. They would be cunning, they would be capable, and certainly, this would be a challenge.
Oh shit, no, my bad.
Oh!
No, that's so sad.
Okay, maybe this wouldn't be so difficult, but nevertheless I would need to be prepared. As they departed for the end, I stayed behind, giving them a head start. 30 seconds passed, and then, ready to perform my duty, fueled with bloodlust, I jumped into the abyss behind them. I'm not proud of what I did next. The man you see on your screen, he's not me. I was possessed by a demon, and as soon as I entered the end, I immediately attacked and murdered the defenseless, harmless Maeve, feeling no guilt whatsoever. And then I got to work on the rest. Next I saw Illicit Flame, the man who had still yet to give me those potions. Anger rushed through my veins, and coming for him, I began to swim up a pillar of water, brandishing my sword. He would be my next victim. I knocked him off his tower and began my pursuit. He was screaming for his life, pleading, but I did not falter. However, as I was chasing him down, I was interrupted by a third party, Snowy Souls. I knew this man would be my ultimate rival in this fight, but I wanted to glean a few of the weaker members first and thin the crowd, get more on my side. So I backed away and began whittling down the health of some of the others, keeping Snowy in the corner of my eye for later. That was when I spotted Gold Nosy. And, like a lion spotting a gazelle across the savannah, my hunt was on. I chased Gold Nosy across the island, racking up small hits whenever I got close enough. But then, just like before with Illicit, Snowy appeared to interrupt my fight. This had to end, and it had to end now. I could no longer keep ignoring Snowy, so I decided this time to stand my ground and fight.
Oh, dragon here! Dragon to you! Hi, Colin. Oh, shit.
Before long, Snowy fled, low on health and needing to heal before I could get the killing blow. I shouldn't have hesitated. I should have chased him down. But I didn't. So now I was back to looking for more easy prey, and when I saw Gold Nosy again, I knew he wasn't getting away this time. After Gold Nosy was down, I knew it was only a matter of time before I won. I passed by a naked Illicit Flame who had died to the dragon. And then, in the distance, through the fog, I locked eyes with my rival, the antagonist, Snowy Souls, and I was ready to finish our match. We traded blows back and forth. I expertly blocked with my shield, then hit him for damage. Then again, things were going well. But, all of a sudden, another member joined his side, Colin. But then, from behind me, The rallying cry of enlisted who had regathered his gear and had rejoined the fight, and the scales had tipped in our favor. Frightened by our team, Cullen ran, leaving Snowy alone. And then, all that was left was to finish the man off. Now, having converted a sizable force, my minions began working on my side to take down the rest of the survivors. And it wasn't long before me and the newly appointed hunter Snowy found Cullen. We began chasing him towards the edge of the end island. I can only imagine that he had an expert plan in his head as he was running, reminding himself of those manhunt clips where the speedrunner would jump off the edge of the island only to pearl behind the hunters and knock them off. That's what he envisioned, I suspect. But reality is far more cruel than obviously scripted videos. And so, his dreams were crushed in a single instant.
Okay.
Next, all that remained was the server owner, hiding like a coward at the top of one of the obsidian pillars. We started by shooting at him. Sir Bork, who had recently become a hunter, broke out his trident and started throwing it. All hands were on deck. At least they were, until I was murdered in a hit and run by two 7'8" unidentified men. But I would not let this stop me. I rushed to rejoin the fight, just in time to see ZK killed by the dragon. And that was the last of them. Now, all that was left was to, together, as one large team, kill the dragon. And with this lineup, we could do it.
Okay, tridents do come back if you throw them in the void, right?
No, they don't do that.
Yeah, they do. Got
Keep
one
telling
back.
yourself that.
I'm dead.
The other one will come back any second now.
We were off to a great start, with Bork throwing his trident directly into the void. I suspect he's still in denial, holding out hope that it will return at any moment. But we had other things on our mind. When the dragon perched, we rushed into action, arrows and axes flying. That day, we killed the beast.
Nope, now everyone's dead. Now we're just killing the dragon. No, that's a nice approach. Good job. Yeah, I don't think my trident is not coming back. Shoot him!
I couldn't have been happier. Not for freeing the Endermen from their tyrannical overlord, no. I was happy for a far more selfish reason. I wanted to be the first to the outer End Isles, and now, looking back upon my eagerness, I can only despair at my naivety, for what awaited me through those gates were set to be the worst hours of Minecraft I have ever played. But I was not yet aware of this. So, I killed myself quickly, returned to the stronghold and geared up in my actual armor and tools, before setting out to the end. I was ignoring everything and anything in my way. All I wanted was an elytra. It was perhaps this self-centeredness which ironically ended up changing me as a human. Things started out fine. Almost immediately I spotted a city. It had no ship, but it was still better than nothing. I spent a few minutes looting the chests and killing the shulkers before heading back out. That was when my path would change. On the outskirts of the city, I spotted him. Colin, the man who I had hunted down just a few minutes prior, who had died to that ender pearl throw. But he seemed friendly, so I asked him if he wanted to team up and find an elytra for us both. He agreed, and so we set out together in search of more cities. We bridged across the void, harvested coarse fruit for food, killed endermen for their eyes. Anything to speed up our journey, anything to find an elytra. Sometimes, we even did things that no one should attempt to do.
I'm not confident if this pearl's lush.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll let you test it. I saw that. You were so close to falling off. Are you sure? I don't know how confident you are now.
Did you make it? Oh my god. Yeah, that's scary. Oh my god.
I saw your pearl arc down below the plateau.
That risk had brought us directly toward another end city, however, so whether or not it was worth it is debatable. There's one major issue, though. Like the previous, this end city also didn't have a ship. So, after a little looting, we were back to the search. You'd think we would have learned from the last Ender Pearl incident, but no. We had no blocks left to our name, and too lazy to mine endstone, we cut ourselves pushing the limit of Ender Pearl throws.
Please, God.
Oh! Oh, you made it?
Bro.
Oh my...
I literally landed on the edge.
Okay, get out of the way so I don't hit you with it.
Yeah, You hit an Enderman with that. That was crazy.
But just like before, this risky throw led us to cross paths with another End City. Another shipless End City. This was getting ridiculous. Just like before, we looted what little there was and headed back to face the end, growing weary from all of this running. We braved more chasms, made more dumb choices, killed more Endermen and mined more Endstone. And finally, after hundreds of blocks of running, we found our 4th End City. What we didn't know then was that this would be the site of a great tragedy which would weigh heavy on my shoulders for the next 2 hours. But, uncaring, we bravely stormed the gates.
It doesn't look like it has a ship, unless it's on the backside. Oh, help me.
Get away from the edge. Whoa, 3?
I don't know how it happened.
And almost immediately, I managed to stare directly at not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 Endermen. And looking back at the footage, this is just completely unfair. They spawned in where I was already looking. But it was out of my control. Immediately, they began pursuing me. I ran fast, screaming for help as I bolted toward the city. Chaos erupted.
Wait, what? Oh my god, I didn't know that was even a thing that could happen.
Me either. I thought they were immune to projectile.
Ooh, just don't get hit with a projectile or you might get screwed.
Oh. Okay. I'm not a big fan of what's going on right now.
Rip.
As I floated upward helplessly, Colin abandoned me in search of loot. I was on my own, struggling to kill the 4 Endermen while simultaneously fending off the shulkers just out of reach. And worst of all, my food was running low. This was the worst case scenario. And then, to make things worse, my sword broke. Colin didn't seem to care much, and was focusing on his own loot, leaving me to potentially die below. But, eventually, the Endermen fell one by one, and I was finally free to join Colin before he took all of the loot. That was what I expected to happen. And, as I'm guessing you can infer, that is not what happened.
That looks dangerous up there.
It's quite dangerous. This kind of sucks. Oh no!
No!
At once, my mission shifted. I needed to recover Colin's items as soon as possible, and to do so without dying myself. A tall order with iron armor, an almost broken iron axe, no shield or sword, and only a few morsels of food. But, knowing the stakes, I rushed my way up the tower. Avoiding the barrages from the shulkers, I made my way to the precipice of one of the bridges. Then I pearled to Colin's corpse, safely recovering his items. I got the rest from the ground below. But now, we had a situation. We were thousands of blocks apart. There was little chance of Colin getting back in a reasonable time frame, and even less of a chance of him surviving to make it here. And now, with all of his items, it looked like the best prospect was for me to travel across the end and find an elytra before returning home for his gear. At the same time, he would attempt to travel toward me, hoping to catch up along the way, or even better, find his own elytra that we had somehow missed. Of course, the problem with this plan were the stakes. If I died, not only would I be losing all of my items, which, let's face it, are not particularly valuable, I would be losing all of Colin's far more valuable items. I now had a significantly bigger weight on my shoulders, literally and figuratively. But I would not let this stop me. I continued the search for the 5th End City, hoping that this one might have a ship, and that my journey could finally come to a close. It's around this time that my headphones died, so I briefly stopped talking to Colin while they were recharging. But no sooner had I deafened and muted myself than did I find that elusive 5th End City. And I immediately realized the unthinkable. You can hear it in my mumbling voice.
Oh.
I didn't even bother to stop anymore. I trekked and trekked on for another 40 real-life minutes. I had entered the outer end aisles almost 2 hours ago now. Enough time had passed for my headphones to not only fully die, but also for them to fully recharge. And only now, after almost another hour since that previous End City you saw a few seconds ago, did I stumble upon my 6th. And what did I see? Another city with no fucking ship. How could this be? In that moment of desperation, Colin gave me some advice, which I really should have listened to. But I was too stubborn.
I remember when...
At this point, just use chunk base, my guy.
We don't have the seed, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
Oh, we do?
DC Season 3.
EC
okay.
Season 3.
All caps.
Well, I still don't really want
I
to.
have number C.
That's fair.
If I had listened, maybe my pain would have been mitigated. Maybe it could have been over. But no. Instead, I kept walking. I'm gonna put things into perspective here by breaking the fourth wall. This in-journey spanned such a long time that, in this script, after every clip I want to show, I'm forced to write a timestamp down to the hours place. I'm rewatching my footage for this one small segment on 8 times speed, and it still is taking me over 20 minutes to sift through it all. I traveled so far that a full durability iron pickaxe enchanted with Unbreaking 3 broke from overuse mining endstone, leaving me with nothing to collect blocks with. But I refused to give up. Not just for myself, but for Colin. On to In-City number 7. Another 30 minutes passed. At this point, everyone who was in the voice call was speaking like zombies. I was still lugging Colin's gear, even though it had been hours since his death and he had given up even trying to reach me. And then, in the distance, another in-city. It was still too far to see if it had a ship, but if it didn't, I didn't want to think about what I would do if it didn't. And all I knew was that the void was looking more and more tempting. But I couldn't. Not with Colin's gear. So all that was left was to hope.
Under Hawk space.
Yes, it has a ship.
Oh my god, you found one?
Oh,
I'm so happy for you,
such
my
a happy
friend.
man.
This is the most elation you will ever hear in my voice. My roommate, who was attempting to sleep next to me, mumbled something, probably trying to tell me to shut up. But he clearly didn't understand the gravity of the situation. This was far more important. But if I didn't manage to climb the elytra without dying, to survive and get Colin's gear back to him, then this whole journey would be for naught. I could not afford to let that happen. I entered the tower at its base, began working my way up to the top. Nothing could get in my way now. I felt vigor rushing through my bloodstream, pure adrenaline in my capillaries. No obstacle was too large, no shulker bullet too deadly. I was going to claim that elytra, and nothing would stop me.
That's fair.
Why are you buying clothes at the soup store?
No, don't die. Don't die.
Oh, I'm so
Save your
close.
coordinates.
I was so close
Save
to
your
dying.
coordinates.
I was so close to dying.
The others were busy chatting away in the background, unaware of the horror and terror which gripped me when I saw my health go down to half a heart and 3 shulker bullets coming my way. If it weren't for that one shulker bullet which barely missed me and hit that wall, I shudder to imagine my reaction. But I was alive, and that was all that mattered. After making it out of that hellscape, I traversed the tops of the towers, purled expertly to the ship, and made my way to its underbelly. And there, in front of my eyes, the prize which had eluded me for almost 3 hours and 15,000 blocks. I didn't wait, and the relief when it entered my inventory was palpable. I looted the rest of the in-city carefully before flying off in search of an elytra for Colin using the few rockets I had pre-prepared. And immediately, almost as if taunting me, I found another in-city with a ship within 1 minute. After almost carelessly dying twice, both of which would have been the saddest moments of my entire life, I decided to cut my losses. Taking the elytra and booking it home, weight finally lifted from my shoulders as I slipped to the overworld. I have never been so relieved in my life to be done with anything. In all honesty, this might have been the least fun I've had playing Minecraft since the first episode of my no-jumping challenge with Elliot. After getting home, I loaded Colin's gear into a shulker and dropped it off at his house, finally free of my duty. And, tired beyond belief both physically and mentally, I was able to log off for the night in complete and utter peace. The next day I was in a good mood. After all, I could get to the enjoyable part of this video's plans, the building. And this good mood is obviously reflected in my attitude at the start of this recording.
Don't bring my precious love.
I was so happy that I had found an elytra and collected all my materials that I was, of all things, singing In the Still of the Night by the Five Satins. Downright jubilation. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, this next build would be an addition to the boardwalk. I wanted to build a larger building east of the first, and I wanted this one to also have an interesting color scheme. So, using the blocks I had spent so long collecting at the beginning of this video, I started building the lower floor. The palette for the bottom floor would use mangrove planks, stripped mangrove logs, netherrack, and red nether brick. Truthfully, I don't think I'd ever used red nether brick before this build, but it worked perfectly for the shadows. I added a door before putting on the roof, which would serve as the foundation for the second layer. I wanted this build to be uneven from an architectural perspective, as if the upper floor had been slapped on like it was straight out of What Remains of Edith Finch. I went through first with a layer of cyan terracotta, then I added shadows to the underside and the darker zones using mud and smooth basalt. I really like texturing this way, thinking of blocks as colors and representing levels of light rather than as materials. It makes the process a lot more like painting. Next, I added some support pillars before moving to the upper floor. Now, the bottom of this floor uses perhaps my most interesting block choice, being light gray glazed terracotta. The cyan accent in the pattern is exactly what I was looking for and matches perfectly with my plan. Really, the glazed terracotta blocks get much more hate than they deserve. They're not super versatile, but they certainly make a build instantly unique. Then, after the bottom trim was complete, I built up a gradient using layers of calcite, diorite, and clay. Then I blended these layers together with texturing, mixing in some white concrete powder as well in the highlights. Next, I added a line of iron bars around the perimeter of the balcony. At first, I experimented with trapdoors like in the first build, but they completely blocked the glazed terracotta trim from a distance, so I settled on something more transparent. To finish off the basic exterior of the upper floor, I began placing the roof using the little copper I had. It wouldn't be enough, but for now it was what I needed. Where the roof of the first building was primarily oxidized copper with small sections of weathered copper, I decided this one would be primarily weathered copper with small sections of oxidized, in order to bring out more of a greenish tone. And then, to complement this greenish tone, I decided to add vegetation spilling out over the roof and down the walls. I made these plants with moss, bamboo blocks, and melons, along with some drip leaf plants. For decoration, I added some solar panels and an antenna topped by a sea pickle to tie back into that green color of the roof. And truthfully, every time I come up to the roof, I feel so much joy just standing there. So I feel as though I did a good job on this part. I finished up some detailing by bringing the vegetation down the sides, then I added a door and some windows, and then some lanterns to the build. On the interior front, I turned the upper floor into an artist's studio. I built a ladder up to the roof and used a trapdoor to represent one of those ladder guard things that's padlocked so only staff can access it. Then I added filing cabinets and shelves using beehives and chiseled bookshelves, along with some other blocks. This also had the effect of covering up the mud patch in the back of the room that peeked through where the shadow was on the underside. I covered the vegetation from the inside on the front wall using paintings, but decided to keep it on the back wall since I liked how it looked. I also added work lights to one side of the room using end rods. I decided to make the bottom floor a weapon shop and designed the katakana banners for the entryway. Inside, I placed smithing tables, fletching tables, anvils, and target blocks, along with some weapons and item frames to make everything look nice. And then, with the roof finally finished once enough copper had oxidized, it was done. But before I show you the finished build in a series of cinematic shots, there's something else I want to show you. The cliffside between the two shops was looking kind of empty, and I wanted to terraform it. So, I did. I made the base dark using mud and basalt, and slowly worked the rocks up to a white peak using calcite. I threw in some dirt and jungle slabs along with some stone buttons. But secretly, this cliffside hides my favorite part of the build. Beneath a skylight in the rock is a daylight sensor, hooked up to a simple redstone mechanism I was tinkering with. Basically, every night a music disc will be automatically loaded into a jukebox, bringing the boardwalk ambiance to life. This can also be randomized by adding multiple discs to the system. And the best effect is that on servers when people sleep before night falls, it can delay the mechanism, meaning that when others are online, the activation of the song is somewhat random, making it a nice surprise every time it plays and keeping it from getting stale. So, as night begins to encroach, let's take a look at the newly expanded boardwalk, accompanied by music. Truthfully, I really liked how this build turned out. In fact, I liked it so much, I decided to ask my roommate what he thought of it. My roommate may be a familiar face for those of you who watched the Outcast SMP. He is Sandrodo, the one responsible for some cool builds you may have seen. And so, I was curious what he would think of my efforts, knowing that he's a far superior builder to me. I asked him from across our dorm room, "Did I cook? Or is the kitchen on fire?" He walked over, stared at my screen, at the build, then continued to stare. He said nothing. I said nothing. He tried to mutter a few words, then cut himself off, and back to silence. And I knew in that moment that my kitchen wasn't just on fire, but was already in ashes. I spared him from having to tell me he didn't like it, but my confidence was ruined. However, over the past few days, I've come to terms with the build. I like it, no matter what my roommate says, and I'm proud of it. So let me know what you think. Did I cook, or is this another case of self-immolation? Tell me in the comments below. Anyway, Finally done with my build, having done everything I set out to do, including that harrowing journey through the end, I decided that it was time to rest. I would be able to live a peaceful life on the server from now on, alone at my boardwalk, expanding my build slowly, living my dream life. The same thing I planned to do 2 years ago on the Outcast SMP. At least, that's what I hoped. But then, just like before, I received a message. And the message was from none other than Snowy Souls, the antagonist from the end. But I was willing to hear him out, let bygones be bygones. After all, I had technically been the villain then, not him. And above all else, I wanted to hear what he had to say. The first piece of news was simple. He was moving nearby, just down the river from me. This would be nice, as I'd been lonely without a neighbor. But the second piece of news caught me off guard. Snowy was inviting me to join his corporation and make a conglomerate. You see, Snowy had been hard at work early this season selling all manner of enchanted books and diamond gear. And now, he wanted to join forces and create a capitalist empire on the server side by side with yours truly. And at once, all visions of a peaceful life were subsumed by those of glimmering diamonds and riches beyond my wildest dreams. Opulent carbuncles, garish chasubles, a mound of gold which would stretch to the heavens. Yes, this was my path forward, my method of procuring what I needed to expand my builds and create my vision. And so, I sent him a single, 2-word reply. I'm in. We were gonna be rich. Anyway, that's all for today. In the next episode, you will see me and Snowy building our base of operations in the shopping district and establishing our corporation. This was a big video to make, and the next one will be even bigger, so if you all enjoyed, please consider subscribing. As a small channel, every individual means more than you can know, whether it's a subscription, a like, or even a comment with constructive criticism. Anything goes a long way. Well, that's all for today, and until next time, see ya.